Do you feel like there are common traits every horror protagonist has to have, or no, it just varies from movie to movie?
I think it varies. It seems to vary. You know, I mean, I think the genre throughout history has loved strong female characters. I really do. I mean, I think that's something that you can trace back through many films. You know, you can go back to the 60s, you can go back to Rosemary's Baby, you can go back to, you know, I'm sure earlier examples, especially the 60s on. And as you get into the 80s and you get, you know, the final girl from slasher films, and you get the strong female lead from like Romero's Dawn of the Dead, you know, sometimes they're just the survivors, but sometimes they're more than a survivor. They're an instigator. And nowadays, I think the whole game has changed, you know. But I think that strong female characters have been part of the genre for a long, long time. I mean, I'm not talking about scream queens, really. I'm talking about intelligent survivors who, you know, have their wits, like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, this type of thing.
Or Catherine Ross in Stepford Wives? Was she?
Sure, you could use that.
She was more passive, but there was a strength in her.
Yeah, I think that like people use the term scream queen, and I think when you know, they kind of came up in the 80s with slasher films, and I think there's a difference between like the sort of the scream queen victim sort of screaming type and what like Jamie Lee Curtis was doing a lot of times was she was genuinely a tougher, intelligent, you know, like the part she played in Halloween and some of the other horror films she did around that time. I think there is a difference there between those two.
Betty Buckley. Sorry to interrupt. Betty Buckley and Carrie, who kind of like.
Well, I think Carrie herself. I think Sissy Spacek is like. I mean, she's that's what's so cool about that movie and that character, and that's why people keep coming back to it with remakes and stuff. Is she's like the monster and she's kind of the hero. I mean, you really feel for her. I mean, have you ever felt for a character so much in a horror movie or maybe almost any movie? I mean, she is so victimized, and at the same time, she's so relatable. Like even if your situation, you know, growing up wasn't that intense, you still relate to her. It's still those pressures of high school and all that stuff that Stephen King tapped into. I think that's an incredible character. You know, and what's cool is that it creates weird feelings at the end because she's, you know, killing all these people, and you don't know how to feel about that because you're like, well, it's kind of awful, but you're kind of glad, you're kind of happy for her. It's a mixed emotions, but
yeah, that's a real traumatic movie to see too if you're under a certain age, I think.
Oh yeah, my whole feelings about that movie have actually, like, I've appreciated it more and more over the years. Back then I was sort of under this impression when I first saw it, I was sort of not a fan of De Palma. I thought his movies were over directed and too baroque and everything with a split screen and all that. But since then, like, we've watched it a few times, and every time I watch, I'm like, I'm not looking at any of that stuff. You're just looking at the performances and how good they are, and you're just so involved in these characters. And I think it's easily one of the best Stephen King adaptations for sure. Maybe the best, you know, one of the best out there.